Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for being up here on this snowy afternoon in the Bronx. I have my team here, obviously the mayor and Councilman Jimmy Vaca with us. So just for the last 3 years, we made a lot of strides bridging the gap between cops and the people that we serve in all of our neighborhoods. And we've substantially pushed down crime all over the city, and we spoke about that at the year-end crime press briefing. But in order to maintain those relationships and in order to continue our primary mission of fighting crime and keeping people safe, we also need to keep our cops safe. That means the latest technology, the latest tactical equipment, and the latest and best training offered anywhere by any police department in the country. So in order to safely and effectively patrol New York City, we need to have the best trained officers around, and I think we do. And in order to have the best trained officers, obviously we need to have the best trained facilities. So we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about Rodman's Neck. I'm going to talk about the show and tell we had outside with the vehicles. So the New York City Police Department took over this property, believe it or not, way back in 1960, even before I was on the job. And some of the structures have not been updated since. So we're planning 6 new outdoor ranges, fully outfitted with sound baffles. That's to help reduce the sound of gunfire, which has long bothered residents of City Island. We want to be good neighbors, and this will definitely help us with that. And most of the training here continues to be static training, and we need to change that. We need to transition into tactical training. So this will, with this remodeling, will definitely help move transitioning into tactical training. The funding will allow us to add far more tactical training scenarios, shooting from different positions and locations that more closely mirror realistic situations that our cops face. We're going to build a new tactical village. Our current tactical village is right outside 2- to 3-story buildings. Soon we'll be able to better train for active shooter scenarios and a host of other real-world urban incidents. We've had another number of active shooter exercises throughout the city. I think a lot of people here are probably the one we did in Kingsborough College out in Brooklyn. We have to be able to make sure we can do that more often. We're constructing a new training facility with gun services and ammunition storage. It'll also allow us to provide the necessary classrooms, lockers, and dining hall, lavatories, administrative space. I think the same dining hall has been up here forever. I think I remember eating meatball sandwiches back here way back in 1983. Might even be the same meatballs. We'll be upgrading and installing basic utilities like gas and water, and we need to perform some remediation and infrastructure work, including drainage and paving a new roadway, parking, installing new security gates. And I think what you saw outside, and we gave you a little bit of that, I guess about 1.5 years ago, it's important for our cops to feel that they're safe. And in light of some of the incidents of the last 2 years, specifically Joe Liu and Rafael Ramos and Brian Moore, we had to do our best to make sure that our cops remained as safe as possible. So that's why we have those door panels and the window inserts. We're going to do a Q&A after the mayor speaks and after Councilman Vaca speaks, so we can get into the specifics of what technology we're actually using out there on the RMP. So once again, thanks for being here, and I'd like to introduce the mayor.
Thank you very much. Commissioner, thank you. And to all the leadership of the NYPD here today, thank you for your continued great work in this city. The idea today that's so fundamental is keeping our officers safe and helping our officers to be the best they can be. And that's what's occurring with this investment in Rodman's Neck. You know, it was very powerful to see the demonstration of those safety panels. You all saw those window panels into which numerous bullets had been fired, and the panels stopped each and every one of the bullets. That means our officers are safe. That's fundamental. We owe that to our officers, and that's a huge improvement in our ability to keep them safe. And also the door panels, and that's amazing technology. I really, literally couldn't believe my eyes. You saw that material, very high-tech material that absorbs the bullet. It literally takes the bullet's trajectory and uses it against it to stop it dead in its tracks. And the bullet was not able to go through the door. And again, you saw numerous examples of bullets that have been fired into that material and did not pass through. So this is the shape of things to come, and this will be done quickly. In the case of the doors, all of our patrol vehicles will have the door panels in place by the end of this year. In the case of the window panels, they're being put in steadily. They have to be manufactured, and I was happy to hear from the Deputy Commissioner they are manufactured here in America. They have to be manufactured. They have to be created specialized fitting for each type of vehicle we have on patrol. Those will all be in place by the first half of next year, and we're trying to see if we can do that even more quickly. But so impressive to see what that technology is achieving, and yet at the same time allowing our officers to have enough of the window space open that they can still communicate with people in the community. They can still see their side mirrors effectively. As you saw in the case of the window plates, they can come out. In the event of an emergency, they can come out. Now, they're meant to be in the vast majority of the time, but if there's ever a reason to, an officer could take that window plate out quickly or put it back in quickly. Now, that's hugely important to officer safety and everything we're trying to do to make this an even safer city. It's great to be the safest big city in America. We want to go farther. But this next piece with Rodman's neck takes us to some places we haven't been before. Because remember, this is about our officers being as prepared as possible. And I want to emphasize that is for fighting crime, and that is for fighting terrorism as well. Our officers getting the best possible firearms training is valuable to them in all they do. Now, as the Commissioner has told me many times, one of the untold stories about this police department is how infrequently our officers fire their weapons. It's a stunning example of the progress the NYPD has made over decades. It's one of the police departments that per capita fires its weapons the least in all of this country. And when our officers do fire their weapons, they do it for very specific purposes and in a very precise manner. This training will help them to be even better. And that obviously connects to the training related to de-escalating confrontations and being as careful and restrained as possible. But also active shooter situations. This is the world we're living in today. We saw this as recently as just a few days ago in Quebec City. Our officers have to be ready, not just our specialized officers in the CRC, SRG, and ESU, but all our officers have to be ready to confront an active shooter situation. The more training they get in more realistic settings, the better off all of us will be. First and foremost, for the safety of our officers, but their ability to quickly diffuse the situation, to locate and address the shooter is paramount to everyone's safety. So this will allow us to provide much better training to let them be the best they can be at that. Now, I just want to show one thing. I'm going to migrate over here for a second, because I know that councilmen will speak about the concerns that the community's had about noise. I want to show you the before and after. This is part of the firing range today, and you can see this is open. So our officers are practicing firing into this berm. There's nothing that contains the noise, and it's heard constantly on City Island and surrounding areas. This is what's going to be. You can see here, this is open only on one side, and here's our officers firing at targets in an enclosed area that takes the sound in and muffles the sound. This is going to allow for a great reduction in the sound that's escaping to the surrounding area. And the way it was described to me is the sound that will be heard on City Island will be ambient sound. In other words, if you listen very carefully, you might hear it, but mainly it's going to blend in with everything around you. I'm sure the council will tell you what it's like now, which certainly cannot be called ambient sound. So this is an example of how this is going to improve the situation for the surrounding community. Just want to say a couple other things. We also believe fundamentally, because of our neighborhood policing strategy, which is working so powerfully, that is about connecting our officers and our community members and making them partners. Commissioner talked about being good neighbors. We want to be good neighbors to City Island, other communities in the Bronx. It's important that we show them we hear their concerns and are doing everything we can to address them. And the councilman has very persistently raised these concerns over the last few years, so I'm glad that we're in a position now to address them. It will take time. We've said in the budget announcement this is a 5 to 7 year project. Some pieces will happen more quickly, but it will happen steadily over the next few years, and the price tag, $200 $75 million for the improvements at Rodman's Neck. And then for the investment in the bullet-resistant windows, again, every patrol car will have them. That's a $10.4 million investment. But I'll tell you something, this is $10.4 million. It's going to be some of the best spent money in our budget to protect our officers. So this is an investment we are proud to make. In the end, the NYPD has a very, very tough job, one of the most complex jobs you could possibly imagine, the most diverse city in the country, the biggest city in the country, the #1 terror target in the country. We owe it to our officers and to our residents to give them the best possible equipment. And this is another step forward on top of the technology that's been provided to officers, like the smartphones, technology like ShotSpotter, the ballistic vests, all of the things we're doing to upgrade, keep our officers as safe as they can be, but also allow them to do the best work they can do. A few words in Spanish. Estamos realizando inversiones para nuestra policía tenga los mejores equipos y centros de capacitación. Con el NYPD preparado y trabajando junto a la comunidad, Nueva York sigue siendo la ciudad grande más segura de nuestro país. With that, I want to turn to, again, a man of great persistence and single-mindedness, Councilmember Jimmy Vaca.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Police Commissioner and all the great people of the NYPD. This allocation of $275 million is going to give our police the first-rate type facility that they deserve, and it's going to mitigate the noise that the residents on City Island have endured for years. You know, this facility needs updating and needs it drastically. Many of the buildings are temporary structures that were made permanent, buildings that should have long been gone. This allocation is going to allow for a total reconstruction of this range. It's going to mitigate the noise that we've had to put up with, which is often unbearable and disrupts the quality of life on a beautiful community called City Island here in the Bronx. We know that noise and quality of life is really important. We want to also be supportive of our police officers, and this allocation will achieve both purposes. Especially today with technology as it is, we need a first-rate facility for our police officers, and this allocation will go really into that need. So I'm here to thank the mayor. I was unbelievably happy when I saw this allocation. I was relieved. It was something that we fought for now for many years. We've brought up in budget testimony and letters, and the mayor had a town hall meeting where he heard the concerns firsthand. So I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for listening. I want to thank the police commissioner and all the officers here today for all that you do every day to keep our borough safe and our citizens safe. And I look forward to working with you on the designs for this project going forth, having that type of community input, and really seeing the day where we can cut the ribbon. I hope you'll all be back soon. Thank you.
Just want to say two quick additional points. In terms of Rodman's Neck, that town hall meeting was very important, and thank you, Councilman, for hosting it, because hearing directly from residents how much of a problem it had become in their lives helped me to focus. Obviously, NYPD had long since realized this was an issue and had a vision for how to address it, but it helped to speed up the process for me to have heard directly from your constituents. Second, on the bullet-resistant panels, just want to emphasize on those window panels, and I held them up to show you guys the width. It's 1.25 inches. And that material was first developed by the United States military and is used, variations of that are used in military vehicles. But 1.25 inches, extraordinarily thick and strong material, and that's why it could withstand all of those shots simultaneously. And you saw nothing went through that glass. When you feel the other side of it, it's just a small indentation. It's amazing. All those shots concentrated right in the same area of the glass. All you could feel on the other side was just like a little bump. Nothing got through. All those bullets were actually captured in the glass, just like they were captured in the door panels. With that, we welcome your questions. We're going to talk about Rodman's neck and the bullet-resistant glass today. Any questions on that, please?
Now, as far as the thickness, what kind of bullet can it
Bobby Martinez.
hold, and
Sure.
at what kind of close range?
Hi, Juliet. I'm going to get Commissioner Martinez to talk about that. Bobby?
Both
Introduce yourself.
Commissioner Bob Martinez, Support Services Bureau. It's rated for level 3, which is a 44 Magnum is the rating of that. We went a little above that, and it's still held up, but it's rated for level 3.
And at what range?
We did it as close as 5 feet. We don't advise to go closer than that because of the safety of the person firing the firearm. But we felt that would be real live situation.
For the mayor or the councilman, can you describe what it was like for residents on City Island? What it's like now? I mean, just sort of qualitatively, what does it sound like? What is the discussions really like?
It's a loud crackling. It's something that you'll get out of bed when you hear. It's something that when you walk on City Island Avenue, you will unavoidably hear, and very, very clearly, and very significant noise. I've witnessed it myself. I don't live on City Island, but I've been on the island when it happens, and it's constant, and it's gotten worse. I have to be honest with you. We don't have any noise protection here at all. And the ranges we have now are open ranges, as the mayor said. So there's no buffering, no protection at all from noise at all. This will give us one facility with buffering, significant noise reduction to the point where, as the mayor said, we expect there to be no noise at all because it will just be part of the atmosphere and to the residents of City Island will not be disruptive at all. That's where we are going to have that type of input in years to come into the design. But knowing that this is the objective is certainly reassuring to us after fighting for many years that this be the case.
Hey, Juliet, just a clarifying point from what Commissioner Martinez said. That 5 feet was for testing purposes. That's good up until point blank. Rich?
Just what's the timetable in all this? Do we have an idea on how long is?
Yeah, with the ballistic panels within a year, all the ballistic inserts, the windows, probably a little bit more than a year. And that's for all of our patrol vehicles.
And on Rodman's neck itself, what the...
Vinny? Yeah, Commissioner Grippo will give you an answer on that.
Yes, Deputy Commissioner Vincent Grippo. So the timetable is capital construction projects take time. We're looking at a 5 to 7 year time frame. We are looking to do sound mitigation as early on in that schedule as possible. But one of the issues we're going to be dealing with first is the infrastructure out here. The rain causes flooding conditions. Stormwater runoff is an issue. So the improvements to this island, in addition to the newer facility, we're going to be dealing with all of these environmental issues and pulling sewage and electricity and gas to the island so we can have a modern, state-of-the-art facility.
Commissioner Grippo was really looking forward to answering your questions.
Any thought to putting this on windshields or back windows?
Bob, you want to talk about that a little bit? Sure. Yeah.
So to enable us to put on windshields or rear windows, in a motor vehicle, it has to be crash tested. So current windshields are a laminate. The bulletproof glass is not that type of glass. It's very rigid. It's going to only be manufactured flat and not make the curves. It also adds a great deal of cost and weight to the vehicle.
So could you just finish that? So so the current plan is that you're not planning on that.
Right. Currently, with the current technology, we're not going that direction. But certainly, as time goes on, if technology changes and they can develop a bulletproof windshield, we'll address it at that time.
Yeah, and Juliet, the other point that we've seen horrible tragedies and near tragedies, like in Philadelphia. Thank God the officer escaped from, but overwhelmingly, and the experts can speak to this, but overwhelmingly the danger to our officers comes from the sides.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, and also to Commissioner O'Neill, I'm wondering if there's any level of concern from you in regards of how this strategy and maybe any improvement plans in the future, not only to keep officers safe, but the city safer overall, could be affected by any kind of cuts in federal grants now that we're seeing some possibility that the Trump administration could add in this program?
I'll start. Feel free. Yeah. So let me put this in perspective. I want to separate the immediate issue related to the executive order from last week versus the overall issue. We feel strongly on the executive order that we are in a position to challenge it, as will other cities and states. And again, the most recent example, ironically, was from the other side, ideologically, was President Obama's executive action, which was challenged by a number of states, and ultimately they succeeded in having it struck down. So if there is an attempt to implement, I want to emphasize that executive order is only a piece of paper until there's an attempt to actually make it material and affect our city's funding. Unless and until there's an attempt to implement, it's only theory. If there is an attempt to withhold any funding, we will instantly go into court for a stay and ask a judge to stop any attempt to withhold our funding. As you saw as recently as Saturday night, a federal judge on a different executive order stepped in and issued a stay. And then there would be a larger court process that could go on not only months, but potentially years, as was true with President Obama's executive action. All of that likely would proceed with a stay in place of one type or another, and funding would continue to flow. So on the immediate threat to funding, we feel we're in a strong position. I emphasize the funding in terms of executive order overwhelmingly would affect one agency and one agency alone, the NYPD, and overwhelmingly would affect its ability to fight terrorism, which I think will cause many in the federal administration some pause when they actually realize that what they've been doing was inhibiting the NYPD's ability to keep us safe. Second part of your second element of your question, I would say, is larger budget cuts. This is an entirely different discussion where we have every reason to be worried, which is why there was a lot of caution in our preliminary budget proposal. The simplest two things to worry about: a repeal of the Affordable Care Act without a very ample replacement would immediately lead to a great reduction in funding for our public hospitals, directly and indirectly. Any Medicaid block granting or other Medicaid action would immediately hurt our public hospitals. More and more people without insurance would hurt our public hospitals to the tune of potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. That's a direct cut. Then that affects the rest of our whole budget. The bigger challenge, if major tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations are passed by the Congress, they will then take the fact that they'll have a lack of revenue and look for equivalent cuts. Those equivalent cuts will most likely come from housing, education, mass transit, all areas that will hurt New York City and other cities distinctly. Again, potential hundreds of millions of dollars of impact. When you add those things together, we're then going to have to come back and understand what that means for our city budget and where we would have to compensate. So that will play out into the spring and then the federal budget in the fall. So I'd say if your question is anything we're talking about here today affected immediately? No. For things that will take us in, particularly into the end of this year, into next year, yes, real dangers.
Anything else on this issue?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, just looking to get a little bit more information on your upcoming meeting with Preet Bharara's office.
This is not what we're talking about. We're on this topic. Come on. We're on this topic. I'll see you later in the week. Go ahead.
On the EO,
No, it was related to this. Go ahead.
And working with ICE, you talked about drunk driving in some cases being a minor crime. That's criticism.
Again, this is not about this topic here. We're going to be talking to you later week on all sorts of other topics. We're just on this topic. That's how it is. Anything else? Come on.
You sort of opened the door to talk about...
I didn't open the door because the budget question was about could it affect this.
Well,
I'm not going to have a debate club, my friends.
Tell me if this relates to the topic then. You mentioned yesterday that you might possibly consider expanding the 170 offenses that would trigger cooperation between city officials and ICE, which obviously the White House is very much interested in, and it relates to the overall theme of some of the executive orders. Are there any specific plans to change or amend that list?
Again, I don't think that is pertinent unless you're trying to stretch it to the point of how they would respond to us on the executive order. I don't think that's pertinent to the budget question. On the budget front, I've said those fine-tuning questions have no bearing on the budgetary discussion. If the intention of the executive order is to withhold funding from cities like New York and many others that have delineated different offenses, if that the federal administration finds unacceptable and they want no qualifications whatsoever, then your question doesn't have any bearing on that reality. Any attempt to take away our funding on the executive order, we're going to fight in court. I think I was pretty clear today in Albany that we're going to have a discussion about whether areas needed to be added. I think those will be very limited, but I'm certainly happy to do it. I'll talk more to you later in the week on all those issues. Last call on these.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
All right. Well, yeah, but that's not an issue. That's not a police issue. You know, we have this facility, this facility for the councilman here. I just want to get it involved. We have more meetings, but we can talk to the. But it's not related to this facility. That's why we're trying to get this all out there. What councilman thought is very important. I appreciate it very much. I want to